Welcome to Letting Go with Aloha. Today I have a very interesting guest all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. He actually sent me my new favorite mug. If you don't know, I'm a very avid Elvis Presley fan, and my guests actually share the same dentist, but that's not why he's here. His name is David Rogers, and he's one of my daughter's really soul sister friend. And Sabrina often reaches out to David. He's like a father figure in her life. But let me tell you a little bit more about him. He was raised in Memphis, went to an all boys Catholic high school, and attended the University of Mississippi. He began a career in the service sales industry and later moved into the medical and surgical sales distribution, specializing in orthopedics and neurosurgery. He's the proud father of 3 daughters and navigating fatherhood to this day. He's a man of many hobbies. You have to watch his TikTok. He'll share his where you can find him. He takes photos from landscape to, and he does filmmaking, anything to do with outdoors. And his greatest challenge, which we'll be talking about, is, being the best father that he can be. So let's welcome David.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So my first question is, what does being a father mean to you? You have 3 adult daughters. Oh, can you share their ages?
Yeah, they're 27, 25, and 22. So my daughters are all adults now, and
All adults.
so and the oldest one I believe is Sabrina's age. So um, they are
Yes,
the
yes.
that's how you and I
Oh,
actually.
that's right. And I just didn't realize that Chelsea's the age of your youngest.
Yes, yes.
So the
I don't think they've
22 and
met yet though.
they
But
haven't met yet. I think she might have met. Wait, did she? No, I think she did meet Taylor,
oh, she
or at
did.
least she either met her or yeah. I think they went to. I don't know if they had a bite to eat or something, but they
Right.
share similar like personalities. More
Hmm.
introverted than your oldest. But how is it different being? Well, what does a dad mean to you, and how is it different from being, a dad of younger ones, say they're below 10, and then when they're adults, I think the dynamics really changes, and even conversation topics, just the way you connect, right? What do you think is
Right.
the
So when my children were little, um, I was I was a very hands-on dad. I mean, I was around all the time. I never missed their games. I never missed their, I went to all their games. And I think if I recall back, I may have missed one for each child, and it was only because I was on the road coming home and I missed the time. But back then it was, you're instructional. That's your role as a parent to me is you're trying to be. I don't really. I never looked at myself as their friend like a lot of parents do these days, and I looked at it as a uh, reviewing my past because my past was not the best of circumstances, but I knew that I didn't want to go down that path again, and so I viewed fatherhood like I was someone just trying to give them the guidance that they needed without like um, where some parents will be like their best friend and they're trying to tell them everything and they're trying to be. I was more of I was kind of demanding, but and there were mistakes I made and things like that, but I was always trying to be somebody they would look up to. And when they got older, in the teenage years, that changed a lot. The dynamics changed because now they're with peers and the peer pressure of society, and and now that they're adults, it's more like it's an actual conversation. It's more like, well, what do you think about things, and how would you go about,
Hmm.
and so I'm all for deep listening of what they have for ideas, and and I think it's a lot different than it was when they were kids. So
Is it easier, or do you think there's just, you said, there's different challenges, but what do you think is the
I,
challenge today?
I think it's much easier now
Hmm.
than it was, because because you're trying to meet uh, their needs and expectations as a parent, and then when they get older, they're trying to meet their own needs,
Hmm.
and you're just trying to be there for support. And and I think that's the big dynamic shift, is that you're more of a supportive person and less of an everything.
Hmm.
Because I know that I can pick the phone up and call one of them 10 times and they won't answer. But but when they need when they
But
need
when they call you,
when they call me, I'm quick to answer. But at the same time, I understand they have a life like I did when I
hmm,
was in my 20s. I had a life, and my parents really weren't the top tier part of my life. I mean, at that
hmm,
point, I was reaching out to be free.
hmm, hmm. I
And
love that,
so,
reaching out to be free.
right. And I think that's what are doing, which is a natural thing to do. Um, I think that uh, I think it's a good thing that they have become independent women, um, because they have moved all the way across the country from us. So,
That's true. Tell us where they live. They are far from Memphis.
right. So they went to school here in the Memphis area, and the oldest one graduated in 2015, and she that summer left, and or within the year or so of graduating, she moved to Los Angeles and got an apartment, and got in trying to break out as an actor and things like that. And so she moved out there with on a whim, but she knew what she wanted to do, and that's what she did. And I was more than happy that she pursued what she was looking for, because there were a lot of restrictions where there were things that I wished I had done that I hadn't done.
Hmm.
And so I'm seeing like uh, her reach her goals, and I find that very appealing. And then the other two, say 5 years later, they moved out there. And when Taylor graduated, the youngest one, when she graduated, she moved out after maybe, I can't remember if it was like a year or something like that. But anyway, within uh, a certain amount of time, she did go out there. And so they've been out there for, say 4 years now, the other
Hmm.
two.
Hmm.
But they all live like, well, not now, but they all live like in two apartments right next door to each other. So that
I
was
love
kind of
that. Yeah, I love that. It was a very easy move for Madison because it was like the same building. But
right.
the other question I have, and I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable, is how do you think divorce impacted parenting?
Um, well, ours is kind of unique. I mean, I know a lot of people that divorce, and they can't stand their partner, or they don't want anything to do with them, or or it's a negative effect. And for ours, it was all about the girls, and they um, they never really, there was no negative. I mean, of course you got parents divorcing, and that's a tough thing,
Hmm.
because I've gone through that when I was a kid. But for
They were
them,
older, right? Sorry, they were older. Can you? When did this happen? They were older
oh,
kids, right?
yeah. So Taylor had graduated high school, and then we separated. It was almost like
Okay.
an empty nest syndrome. What do you do now?
Yes.
kind of thing. We didn't dislike each other, I don't think. I mean, on my side, I did not dislike my wife. I did not fall out of love with her or anything like that. It was more, uh, you know, I know that things are shifting and we're moving in seems like different directions, and so that's what we did. Uh, and I am still in contact with her on a daily basis. We talk almost every day. I mean, it's not like, um, I mean, I'm going by her house, because I do some things over there, and we both have businesses that I kind of interact with. So, um, but anyway, long story short, yeah, I mean, it's different, but it's the same. Um, I mean, she has her thing that she does, and I have mine, but we still focus on the girls. Financially, I wish I was a little better at being able to do what I could do, but right now, that's not the case, and so it makes it a little bit more difficult. And I don't feel good about that, but at the same time, uh, you really kind of start focusing on yourself. And, when you're
Hmm.
60 years old, you start to think about retirement and, those kind of things. And where do you go from here? And, and that dynamic. And they are adults and they are working and doing what they want to do. And I'm all for it. But, if I could, uh, eventually things will turn around and I will resume my aid to them if they need help or whatever. But I am always there because I'm a Mr. Fix It. I can take anything apart, put it back together again, and
Much like, yeah, Serena's dad. And so that is a superpower. I mean,
oh
that
yeah,
one quick story before we go on break is when you helped Sabrina, not only with car stuff, but when she had to pack that Lahaina
oh
poster.
yeah, the
And she just,
poster,
Mom, I called Madison's dad, and he just, I think you were driving. You stopped, and you like walked her through it and told her exactly how to like take that. She didn't know that I guess it was really, really stuck, right? And that thing was
right?
probably like decades old, and taking the nails or whatever out. And I thought, wow, what dad who's not your real dad, your actual dad,
Yeah.
would come to your rescue? And I think that is your superpower. But let's take a short break and we'll learn more about David's passion and his photography talents. Aloha. I'm Karen Gibson, a wife and mother of 2 adult daughters who wrote Mama's Gotta Let Go, How to Let Go Without Losing Your Sanity. I also founded Brain Builders, a private tutoring business in 1999, whose mission is to prepare students to succeed in and out of the classroom. As a certified neuro-linguistic practitioner, I help my clients rewire their brains to improve communication and problem-solving skills while overcoming limiting beliefs. I recently co-authored The Power to Rise Above, along with 29 women across the globe. I founded Letting Go with Aloha in 2019, mentoring stressed parents to navigate their journey with peace instead of pain. In 2021, I wrote 100 parenting tips inspired by the pandemic, which started out as 100 parenting video tips on Instagram and TikTok. My mission is to be an important resource for parents so they can raise responsible, resilient, and resourceful children as they prepare for adulthood. Well, let's start off with how can people find you on TikTok? Because those beautiful landscape photos, and Jess, I think one of them was you walking your dog. I think
Oh
it was
yeah,
when you first got the dog, and it was just
right.
beautiful cinematography. Where can they find you?
Um, so I think, um,
Do you know the name of it?
I think it's barefoot_2.
I'm gonna find it right now, but let's talk about how did you even start this passion of yours?
So when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an actor, and because I loved movies, cinema, and what really intrigued me was, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Searchers in 1956 with John Wayne, where they go out and they search for this young woman who was taken by Indians. Well, anyway, when they shot that film, John Ford was the director, and he shot that film in Monument Valley, which to me is like the it's like the major star of the film. The landscape was, and
Oh,
it was shot in color, so it brought out all the colors of the stones and the sky and the land and all that. And I just was mesmerized by landscape photography. And when I was a kid, 7 years old, my stepfather had given me a camera because he was a photographer. And he was a physician, but he was a photographer on the side. So everywhere he went, he would take a camera. And so I kind of started that practice myself. And I mean, it was just a little Instamatic camera, that you had back in the day. It had a little cartridge you put in,
yes, yes.
110 film. And you could buy it at, like, if you went to Disneyland or Disney World, they had this little Kodak station set up. You could go in there and buy your film. So anyway, so I would just run through rolls and rolls of film with, just all I could. But I was always intrigued by landscapes. And so as I got older, I never shot people. I never cared to shoot photos of people. I always tried to keep them out of the photo. I don't know why, but that was the thing. And so as I got older, I started shooting more and more landscapes, and I got better cameras and things like that. And when the girls were born, that's when everything changed. I started shooting.
Filming people.
Yeah, it was especially about them. So I had all these little 35 millimeter point and shoot cameras. This is still before digital.
Mm-hmm.
Had all these 35 millimeter point and shoot cameras, and I kept them all loaded in film, and I had them sitting all over the house. So if I'd see something that the girls were doing, I would take a picture.
Wow.
And so they have their whole, and I always tell them this, their whole childhood that is on film is documented. And they have a physical object that they will be able to go back in 70 years and be able to show their grandchildren. And these kids today will not have those photos of when they were kids.
Exactly.
And the reason why is because everybody got into digital, and I can guarantee you that most of them don't have their children's pictures because they switched computers, they didn't upgrade them, they didn't move them over, they didn't store them, whatever. But that's why I knew to do that. And so they have all the negatives and they have all the photos, and we've divided them up, and every one of them has their own photos. And then we have the videotapes of when they were little. We shot all these videos of them when they were little, and to this day, they will go up in the TV room and watch the videos when they were children. It's the crazy thing, but that's what they love to do. But anyway, long story short, I got into film photography when I was a kid, and then as I got into my adult life, I wanted to move up in the size formats that like Ansel Adams shot, which is like 8x10 landscape cameras, which are the big Woodfield cameras, medium format cameras like the 6x7s and the 4x5s and things like that, and the smaller large format as well. But then I also got into filmmaking, where I would shoot little videos just for fun, things like that. And then but like I said, it was all stemmed from cinema. And my stepfather handed me that camera back when I was 7. And so fast forward to today, I go out and I'll shoot videos that people would look at and probably go, that's nothing to it. But when I'm done with it, I feel like
it's a masterpiece, though. You have amazing comments where people are looking at the colors, people are looking at, because you never really think about, well, you do, but the average person doesn't think about landscaping. They're just looking at, you're in, like when Sabrina was in Paris, you're just taking a photo. Okay, I want to be in the picture. You're holding your drink or nowadays, I'm
Yeah.
sure when you see photography, you see people filming, it's all about them and what they're doing,
And
right?
right. And I don't want to be in the film. That's the whole
Yeah.
thing. It's like I don't like being on camera anymore, and I don't know why, but it's just this thing that I have that I don't want to be on camera. And so I don't like making. I mean, you saw the one of me walking the dog in the
Yes,
desert,
but it's always not. Yeah, no one would know what you looked like, right? If they saw
right?
you,
I
because
think
they're
it's just
just
probably the only one I'm in, but it was all about the dog, really.
yeah, beautiful. Just the feeling that you got, and then when you
Yeah,
find the backstory that's when you got the dog, for
right.
your girls.
Because yeah, Madison, my oldest daughter, was in L.A. She wanted a dog. She rescued this dog, and it barked all the time in the apartment, and the lady downstairs couldn't stand it. And so finally, I just drove out to California from here, picked the dog up, and drove it back home. And that's the trip on the way home. I'm
I
stopping.
did not know that. I
Yeah.
remember seeing photos of the dog and little, snippets of the dog, but I did not know that you.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't.
Wow.
Once it's a family member, it's not leaving. So that's the way I felt. And so I was like, well, you may have to get rid of the dog, but the dog's not being given away. I mean, we're keeping the dog. And so that's her name is Pluto, and she is like Pluto. She is as squirrely as she can be as a Disney character. So, um, but she is just a sweetest puppy, but anyway, so I went and picked her up and brought her back.
That says a lot about you. I
Well,
mean, I
I'm
don't know how
kind
many
of
parents would
empathetic.
drive. Just give us a time frame. How long is it from Memphis to LA?
So I always tell people I'm a road tripper. I love road trips. And the reason why is because you'll never see what between point A and B in a plane, and you miss all the landscapes and you miss what America
That is
actually looks like.
true.
So I'm a road tripper, and I'll try to take obscure roads and head out. So my day starts at like 6 in the morning. I start driving because it's daylight, and I drive till it's sunset or right before, and then I stop, and I'll spend the night wherever I am, whether it's in the car or it's in a hotel or whatever. I'm stopping at sunset because I don't want to miss anything. The next morning, I want to get up and I want to see what's a mile down the road. So it takes about 3 days to get across the country. And it's just me. It actually takes longer, but for me, because I stop and look at everything. People hate me on a trip.
I heard, was it the John Wayne's museum or some kind of, was it John Wayne? It was
Well, I
someone.
mean,
Oh, who
yeah,
was it?
it may
They,
have been the John Wayne display that they had in Nashville. I took the girls to.
yeah, it was a national trip, and they were all excited. And they were like, and my dad took us to.
What? I don't know. I thought they had a good time. They may have,
I'm
may
sure
not
they
have.
did. I'm sure they did. But this is why I wanted to interview you, because I think as a dad,
Hmm.
there's just so many parts of you. Just hearing the story about you driving from Tennessee to California just to make sure that the dog stays in the family, even though it can't stay with, your daughter. And then the closing sentence is, please share the story, particular story about Seinfeld, how you actually met
Oh, Michael Richards,
yes. How did that happen? It was at the
Emmy
where did you
Award.
meet him? The Emmy. How did that happen, David? Where you just magically appeared there?
So in 1993, there was a guy who was on the show Maude. His name is Bill Macy. He's passed away now.
I
Uh,
remember Maud.
yeah. Okay. The husband on Maude, his name was Bill Macy. And somehow or another, he married a woman from this area. And we happen to know her. And he said to us one time, hey, you want to go to the Emmy Awards? We don't go anymore. We don't care about going. It's not even a big deal to us. And so we were like, oh yeah. And so
Sure.
yeah, so we got the tickets, and then we became friends with the president's the secretary to the president of the academy. Somehow or another, we schmoozed her with our Southern accent, and she gave us A-list tickets. And so, like when I went, I was on the fourth row of the in the pavilion. I was on the fourth row, and I'm looking behind me, and there are all these famous people sitting behind me, and I'm like up front, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. Well, anyway, that year it was '93. Seinfeld was up for some awards, nominations, and things like that. Well, anyway, so when you go to the awards, there's commercial breaks, obviously, and people get up and they mill around and things like that. Well, when they come back, there are these people that are sitting in your seat called seat fillers. Those people are just there to make it look like it's a full auditorium.
Oh.
So I go out knowing that somebody's going to take my place during the commercial break. And I go out and Michael Richards won his award for Best Actor in a Comedy Series, and he nominated himself.
What?
Yeah, the studio did not nominate him. The producers of the show did not nominate him. He nominated himself. I think it cost like $800 or something like that to nominate yourself. And I had never met him, but I was just enthralled and in love with that show. I just thought it was the funniest comedian slapstick kind of comedy that I had ever seen on a TV show. I mean, I'd seen a lot of other ones, but the way he entered the door every time was like he said in his book, it's like a dog entering the room. And so, anyway,
Kramer, right? He played Kramer.
Yeah, he played Kramer. And so he entered. He had won the award, and he came. And so when you leave and go backstage, you go outside, come around, and then you come back in the front door. And anyway, he's standing inside the atrium of the front door, and I walk up to him and introduce myself, start talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, how do you keep your pants up?" He said, "I almost lost my pants on stage," and I was like, "Well, I pulled my cummerbund up from my tuxedo," and I said, "Well, normally you wear a belt underneath there," and he goes, "I didn't have a belt," and he goes, "Can I have your belt?" And I was like, "I can't give you my belt." So anyway, so we were just talking back and forth, and I know if I ever see him again and we start talking and I ask him about that, he will
remember that
story.
Yeah, the guy who didn't give me a belt.
Yeah, and then so this lady walks up and she interrupts us and she says, "Mr. Richards, I just wanted to hand you your card for your award from the Academy. It's a little thing that just recognizes you as the winner." And he has the trophy already, obviously, but she's got the little card that the Academy gives them that they frame, and that's the actual award. And anyway, and she opens this little folder up, and she says, "And this is a picture of you winning on stage." And we were like, "Where'd you get that?" Because I mean, they had just taken the picture a minute ago. And she says, "Oh, this is new technology. It's called digital imaging." And it was the first digital picture I ever saw in my life. It was an 8x10. He threw his arms up. That's when he almost lost his pants. He threw his arms up like this, and his pants almost fell down. But it was him on stage winning the award. So it was really an interesting thing. And it was kind of like,
wow, what a story.
Yeah.
So, any advice that you would have? This is the last question. Although I said that, I just realized I forgot to ask you what advice you have for fathers of young adults.
Oh, well, there's a couple things, but one is, be present, and let them know that, you're always there, no matter what the circumstance is. Especially with girls, you got to be, you're there for them. And the other thing is the number one advice that if I could go back to, even for myself, if I could go back, is I would have never let my children have a cell phone until they were at least 16 years of age. Social media at a young age, I think, is detrimental. Peer pressure and bullying is huge on social websites. I mean, everybody's a keyboard warrior,
Mm-hmm.
and if I could go back, that would be the number one thing that I would have done is said, I'm sorry, but I can't give you a cell phone until you're 16. And we did that very diligently up until they were about 12. But social peer pressure takes a toll on the family unit, and
Yes.
I think that is the biggest hurdle is you're fighting society as parents. You fight society trying to protect your kids, and they're trying to tell you everything, and then society is trying to tell you, it's okay, don't worry about it, you know.
Exactly.
And so,
Wow.
and I think for me, that was the hardest hurdle. So, not for me personally, but I think for them is that they were so pressured. You got to be in the know. If not, you're going to be out. You know, you're going to be an
When
out.
you feel less than if you're the only one without a cell phone. I had one student in all my years, and the mom told him, when you can afford to buy your own cell phone, that's when you get it. He was the only senior in high school who did not have a phone, and he was really upset about it. But I think in retrospect, I'm sure he's understanding, like, okay, if you want something, you need to pay for it. And then also realizing that when you're 12, I have kids who are young as 5, and they get, grandparents are giving them the latest iPhone, and they're programming it, or they're looking at inappropriate stuff because there's only so much kid protection, or, child protection. With how do you stop them, even if it's not their phone in school, they'll just look at, right? Their
Right,
friend's phone, their uncle's phone, their cousin's phone. And I think I'm glad you brought this up. It's probably the number one challenge that parents have of any age, right? Because your
right,
children, I love when you said that we are fighting society because you have no control, and their influence of what they see. Like, what's really important, and it'll be because of a TikTok thing. Oh my gosh, did you hear that? And it's very sometimes it's traumatizing, and once they see it, they can't unsee it.
train's coming.
Oh, perfect ending. A reminder that David's in train country.
The train.
It's like the Polar Express. It's not just any old train. David lives near the Polar Express train that happens to be visiting Memphis.
Yeah, they always come through here.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. We will have to have a part 2 where David will talk about, hopefully, his connection to Elvis, a personal connection, and how I think just having a conversation about the king of rock and roll, I think, is so important because of what he represented. What you said, he did more than just play music, and
Yeah,
just
he's more than a
the human.
caricature for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, more, yeah. And like what you know of him, because I've always been, I shared earlier before we recorded, how we are so fascinated. People who are in their 20s, people who are any age, and this is someone who died in 1977.
Right. And just to clarify a couple things, Memphis is a big music town. I mean, it's not just Elvis
Not
Presley.
just
I mean,
Graceland.
yeah. So like for some reason, I grew up around a lot of people whose parents were either musicians, famous musicians, or in bands that were famous. Uh, Really odd way. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. It's just kind of that's just the way it happened. But
Interesting.
yeah, so like I was one of the best guitarists that ever did studio recordings was from Memphis, and one of the best bass players was from Memphis, and they were well known bass players and musicians, and so it was really odd that I was around all these people. I grew up in the same neighborhood with Jerry Lee Lewis, and I've got stories about him. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, I was in his house a lot, just when I was a kid because he had a stepdaughter, and we were friends, and we would go there, and he'd have us. I'll have to tell you a funny story about
Yeah.
this.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Podcast.
stay tuned. We will schedule in 2025, maybe even in January or February. We'll have to do part 2 of the David Rogers show on his connection to Elvis, to different musicians and celebrities. That'll be fun. Well, thank you so much for doing this during the holiday season, and I'm sure we'll be connecting soon. Take care, David. Bye.
See ya.